So, Yigal, what do you think of?
Well, some words about policy, which maybe can be of interest. I'm sure that Nissim and his team will do a great job investing in Israeli companies. And it all started, as Rafi said, some years ago when the government understood that there is something to be done in the biotech industry. Otherwise, we are investing too much money in universities. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, about 40% of the budget that goes to R&D in universities, to research in universities, is in life science. So it's a big number. Also, many people are educated to be biologists, and they don't find jobs. So there was understanding that there is a problem. So you can solve the problem either decrease the budget to universities, which cannot be done, or try to take care of the other side of the equation, try to commercialize what is in Israel. So the idea, we started as advisors to the government, me and Rafi and some other people, and try to create the policy. And I want to be very accurate about the policy. It's more or less like we did in the 90s with Yozma. The idea is to bring experience to Israel. It's not exactly to bring big funds to work in Israel. We want that the local people, after one round, first of all, that more funds will come, but there will be Israeli funds. We want to we want them to be in the future like what Orbimed is now in New York. So the idea is...
Or better.
Or better. Better, okay. So the idea is that...
You're already on the base side, so...
So the idea is that the team of people that Nissim is the head of will be in the future an Israeli team, can raise money by themselves, with Orbimed, without Orbimed. This is not the important thing. The important thing is to build a local base for investment in biotech companies. And I hope that it will lead not only Orbimed, another funds or another company will come also. And after one generation, we will see that this sector is built up with more funds that will come without any government help. That's, by the way, happened in the 90s with the Yozma plan.
Okay, now, real quickly, each of you, we're looking for collaborative efforts between Israel and Canada to bridge over the Atlantic. One idea that could be a win-win situation. Nissim, you start.
I think, we have done it in other, usually the way that we see it running, we start a Israeli company, but very quickly this company you have to have the headquarters somewhere else. Because we all understand, we don't have a sales in Israel. We're a teeny country, 7 million inhabitants. So, we have to find some headquarters to run our marketing and sales. So I think one of the ideas is actually start a company in Israel, and instead of moving it to New York, New Jersey, Minneapolis, depending on which area, or Boston, we could move them over here. But we need the infrastructure, we need the people, and we need incentive to bring them over here. So this is where I think...
Jay, arrange for him to be a resident here. Yaacov.
From my perspective, it's relatively easy because, as people already mentioned, scientists around the world collaborate together. So I think that if there will be an incentive, and I think there are incentives for collaboration between Canadian scientists and Israeli scientists, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't collaborate together. And then we can communicate in how to best tech transfer the ideas from the bench to the market. We can either do it with you or with us, but we will find the ways. But the basic is collaboration between scientists in Canada and in Israel.
Yigal.
Well, I must say that I don't have any brilliant idea about it. I can say only one thing that maybe you will think it's not important, but I think it is. And it is the fact that, as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong, that Canada has not the right image. I mean, people know the United States. We know what's going on there. Nobody understands what's going on in Canada, or why shall we go to Canada, what exactly you have here. So, Jerry, I suggest to you to work hard on the image. I think it's very important. Look what Israel did with an image. We have a great image. And this is something that we worked on it. It's not easy. You know, we publish books, Startup Nations. We have to maintain it. You know? So you have to do it, because once people will understand that we have to look in Canada what's going on there, I think you will see many more joint ventures or companies coming here and there.
Well, we have time for a few questions, but Israel, even though it's a very entrepreneurial country, it's a socialistic country, and the last word will be of the government. So, Jonathan, stay with us. No, not right away. First questions. Okay. It's coming.
A brief comment and then a question to Yaacov and perhaps others. The comment is about the earlier comment about risk-averse Canada. And that is really deep. It starts in nursery schools. It goes up to parents walking their children to school when they're 11 years old. It permeates the university, so that we have in Canada a great success, for instance, the Monk School, which is going to be one of the foremost international study schools. We have Waterloo success, but if I just finished a study at York, and Ryerson is never going to be a Technion, because we don't make the tough decisions, we don't alienate the people and make the choices. And the academic section is very uneven, so that across the road, 90 years ago when insulin was discovered, right across the road, still the problems that they never really developed, the real innovative developments that should have come from it. Question now. The question is about the other side, is Israel. Because Israel, you've mentioned all the strengths of Israel compared to a lot of our weaknesses. And one of the strengths came from Joseph Ben David, who did the big study of the EU and its shortcomings in the 1970s, an Israeli sociologist, which became a model for transforming Hebrew University from a German-style university to a very innovative one. But I just did a number of interviews in the spring at Hebrew University of the scientists at Imrich, and I see a very serious weakness among all the great strengths. The weakness is you have maybe 17 scientists and clinicians at Sick Kids Hospital here. If you go there, you don't have Canadians, you don't have Chinese, you don't have Indians, you don't even have a decent postdoc program in your universities. It's a very serious weakness among all your brilliant strengths. And I'd like a comment on that weakness and whether anything's going to be done about it, because I think it's going to have very serious consequences in the long run.
So first of all, I had the opportunity to live for a year in Toronto, so I got a close impression of the conservative financial approach of the Canadians. But there are also advantages in this, and also even at the level of Yissum, but in other startup companies in Israel, you don't have always to look at the startup investment and investment like in early stage project in Yissum as something that is very risky, and we have also structure that make it relatively conservative. For what you said, and I assume that this is one of the reasons that they recruited Rafi from Israel to Canada, and I think that in order to create an environment in the university that a scientist gets up in the morning and thinks how he can invent another invention or a patent and to take it to the market, you have to incentivize the inventor in the right way. You have to have some success stories, not maybe even product on the market, but you have to have an environment like we have in Yissum and the Weizmann Institute of companies that know how to take an invention from the bench to the market, and I'm sure that Rafi is doing a great job in this here in Toronto. So with this environment, when you have success stories, and we have very high incentives for scientists in Israel to succeed in developing products, I think that to combine them together, you will have success stories eventually.
Next question. Okay, go ahead.
One of the questions that's come up again. Okay, thanks. One of the questions that's come up again and again and again is how can Canada and Israel collaborate? And I've talked to you about this, Rafi. I think the key thing that could be done here in Toronto and in Canada and Ontario is to promote the clinical studies. If Israeli companies knew that they could come to Toronto and get first-class clinical studies, which they can do, they will come to Toronto. But there has to be the kind of publicity, the kind that you're talking about, that there has to be the kind of marketing of this capability. I remember when, at the visit of the Ontario Premier, the Ministress, if that's the right word, said that there was going to be incentives, but I still haven't seen those incentives.
We're working on it. Trust me, Maury, we're working on it. Anyways, whoever comes to Toronto for trials has to know how to pronounce the name of the street next to it. It's not Grosvenor, it's Grosvenor, right, Maury?
Rafi is referring to the fact that I lived for most of my life on Grosvenor Street.
Gentlemen? You have a machine.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question for Yigal. When the Premier went to Israel last year and came back, he was... This spring, sorry, okay, I'm getting my years mixed up.
Yigal was in Toronto then.
Okay, but he was incredibly taken with your former office and the role it had played. And when you spoke to people around the Ontario government, a lot of them had heard about the significance and the impact of the Office of the Chief Scientist. My fear is that when people in Canada hear the phrase Office of the Chief Scientist, their view of it is, because of our traditions of public administration, which are much more British, their view is that it's an office like the Office of the Chief Scientist in the UK. And I think it would be very instructive if you could say a few words about what is distinctive and what is different from the Office of the Chief Scientist in Israel from other offices in different government systems.
Well, I'm okay. I said it before. I think, first of all, it's a funding organization. It has a very clear policy. Any project which include a development or innovation that can stand in the criteria of the office can get a grant. The office is not trying to direct where to put the research, where to do the research, anything. So it's like free for any ideas that you can have, any company that can think of everything as far as it's innovative and can show prospect of growth or export for Israel. So this is very simple. I don't know how many other offices are doing it. You need some courage to do it. It's not simple. You have to know how to do it, practically, to use correctly in right ways these grants, because it can be misused easily. And these grants are, of course, paid off by royalties if the project is successful. It is very good for investors because it's off-balance sheet financing. Investors don't get diluted, so it's very good money for them. So it helps also encourage them to come and invest in companies. And what is, I think, maybe people don't understand, especially people in other governments, if you put all this in one hand, and in Israel the chief scientist more or less has a macro view, a big view on the industries that are doing R&D, on all the industries, big, small, medium, seed, whatever. In the university, start from the ideas of the universities until even Teva, which is the biggest company in Israel.